This is a communist-produced M2 Carbine. Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I got something really cool. It is a domestically produced Chinese M2 Carbine. Now, in my last video, it was a cleaning video. It was titled M1 Carbine. Since then, there's been some more research going on around this, and I've found out that it's actually started life off as a M1 Carbine, but then they, at some point, I suppose, sent it to factory 396 to be converted into an M2 Carbine. If you watched my video, my cleaning video, you saw that there's no automatic parts in here at all. So currently it's configured as an M1 Carbine, and there's no intent to change that. But this video is just stating that it was manufactured originally. I think it was originally manufactured as an M2 Carbine, just because you've got the 396 features here from that factory. So, I mean, this information is muddy as is. Definitely take the resources that I have found and have included in the description. And if you discover anything or know any other information, please leave it in the comments. I want to figure out what this is and its history. So I just happened to have stumbled upon it in the wild. And in my research, I've done my best to try to figure out what it is. The CCP is not going to release me any exclusive information to figure out the exact origins of this rifle. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. So quick background on the M1 carbines in Chinese service. As we all know, the US supplied lots of materials to China in the War of Resistance against Japan. And they supplied M1 Garands, Thompsons, M1 carbines. And in that, China began to think, maybe we should copy some of this stuff. So there's actually a really neat copy of an M1 Garand, and then of course, an M1 Carbine. So M1 Garand, haven't seen any on the US market. There's one picture of the receiver. It's pretty neat looking, but it was also an 8mm Mauser, so that's pretty neat. But we're talking about the M1 Carbine today and its history there. So the Chinese began to manufacture the receivers at the Shenyang Arsenal once it was liberated from Japan, and under Japan it was actually called the Mukden Arsenal. So that's where they actually manufacture the receivers and other parts. A lot of these are USGI parts and just the receivers Chinese. This one is actually the receivers Chinese. This lower stock here is an M2 stock, that's also Chinese. What makes this an M2 Carbine? It's kind of interesting because it has the same exact crest as the M1 carbines that I will show in this video, produced by China. Same crest, same serial number, same manufacturing marks. So why is this an M2 versus the other M1 carbines that I'm showing as an example? Well, the documentation I found says that the Shenyang Arsenal production was split off, and then the M1 Carbine copies attempts were sent to factory 396, and in that some of them were converted into M2s. So they would have had the same crest and receiver, etc. To cut in the stock for the selector switch. Obviously the selector switch is not there. And you may notice, if you're a keen-eyed M1 Carbine collector, that this is a little bit different op rod here. That's because this is the domestically produced from China op rod. And it's got a little crack in there, so I'm sure that's part of reliability, perhaps done during the tests. So here's the Shenyang Arsenal crest right here. The bolt is not flattened, it's a round bolt, so that's a post-war right there, or a later war. And then of course here you can really see you've got the late war windage adjusted peep sights here, and there's that ground down right there. The only thing that's not accurate on this rifle is this barrel band, which I believe is someone replaced at some point, because it's supposed to have the bayonet lug. The Chinese M1 carbines never had a bayonet lug. The Chinese M2 carbines did have a bayonet lug. There's specific reference to them in the testing documents that they used them without bayonets, but they were affixed with the bayonet lug. Okay, so they tested in semi-automatic and burst function. They tested the M2 carbines without the bayonets. Apparently it performed pretty well as far as accuracy goes. The grouping was 3 to 5 inches at 100 yards. For burst fire, 5 rifles were randomly selected and equipped each with 6 magazines. Each rifle fired at 3 targets with 20 rounds per target. The general consensus after the trials was that the rifles had issues feeding rounds properly when the fully automatic. The trials documents indicates that it could have been a result of the poor quality of the 30-round magazines, which is why these were issued with 15-round magazines. What's cool about this rifle is that this is possibly one of the M2s that were trialed and tested and were resulting in some of these problems. Now, I don't know if this was changed from an M2 in China to sell on the US market, or if someone changed it on the US market. I don't know, but I don't have any production quantities on the M2s. I do have on the M1s. The M1s, 500 were ordered, only 250 were manufactured, and there are 3 that I've seen pictured. Serial numbers, I think 23 and 36, and then another one, I don't know the serial number on that one. And then a supposed serial number 239, although I have not seen any pictures of this one, so I'm not for sure if it's real or not. This one technically counts because it's the same production batch. However, like I said, it was assembled as an M2 carbine. So for research purposes and historical purposes, I'm going to refer to this as an M2 carbine. But why did it not go forward? Well, the U.S. Was not going to keep sending supplies to a communist nation, especially with the Cold or the Korean War about to kick off. So China was running out of parts. The machining was already crude on this, so the machining tools were not that great. Maybe a skill issue. Either way, they just kind of shelved any semi-automatic project for the time being in order to mass produce the Type 53 Mosin Nagant with the folding bayonet. And then, as we all know, they ended up going with the Type 56 SKS pattern as their semi-automatic rifle down the ways. So pretty neat. The barrel is import marked. It's our US Rockola barrel, so I know this all came together. Unlike the Forgotten Weapons video on the bolt action Chinese M1 carbine, this is not like those at all. This is an actual Arsenal produced rifle. So are those M1 carbines that bear the same crest. The bolt action ones were essentially done at a garage, so they're not anything official in any capacity. And I wouldn't fire those at all. Some might ask, how in the world did I find this in the wild? My father-in-law has gotten into milsurps here recently. I have infected both him and my brother-in-law with the milsurp bug, and my father-in-law has been wanting an M1 carbine, and he goes to this pawn shop and he sees a paratrooper. He realizes what's a paratrooper. So he finds a paratrooper, or he sees this regular M1 carbine that, is just run of the mill, and then the paratrooper catches his eye, but the guy behind the desk says, now this is probably the rarest gun you'll ever see as far as M1 carbines goes. And he's like, what? Whatever, dude. And he's like, no, seriously, it's a Chinese M1 carbine. So then he texts me and asks, he says, what do you know about M1 carbines in China? I was like, well, they were supplied by the US in the Lend-Lease to help fight against the Japanese. And, some of them were reported or imported back in the 80s back to the United States. They're cool. They're not super rare, but they're still cool because you can tell that they were on the Chinese front. And a lot of those were in rough shape because we all know they did not take care of their weapons very well. But then he said, no, he says it's Chinese manufactured. And, I knew of their existence, but it's one of those ones that you never think you would see in person. Definitely not have the opportunity to, pick up actually. So I said, well, let me go, or I'll be up next Saturday. So let's go together and look at it. And we get there, and the guy pulls out. I know immediately after looking at this, or after I saw the crest, that it's a Chinese manufactured M1 carbine. After explaining that, my father-in-law picked it up and has let me make a video on it, take it apart, clean it for him. So I appreciate that. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, taking it apart and learning about it. Hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching.